Hey, welcome back to the Small Business Mindset. So many times, goal setting in our lives has to do with visualization and manifestation. But what if all the visualizations you do and you're manifesting something, but you've never actually seen it, touched it, experienced it? How hard is it to put into your periphery and your brain so you really know what you're going for? Here's what I mean by this. I love a good vision board. And I also love to use Feng Shui elements in my home and my office. In fact, you probably heard me talk about on another podcast how the wealth and prosperity bagua in the Feng Shui terms in my house is in my breakfast nook part of my kitchen. And part of my visualization and my intentionality in using the feng shui practices was to look for elements in that area of my house to be intentional with wealth and prosperity. So it has to do with colors and elements and visualization of specific features. So I went so far because it's in an area of our house that has a table, our kitchen table sits in there. I ended up painting the underside of my kitchen table purple because purple is one of the colors in that bagua. It has to do with royalty. So if you think about gold and rich reds and purples and things like that. And I didn't have any of those in that section of my house. So I painted the underside purple. And then I started taping to the bottom of my kitchen table photographs, magazine cutouts, things like that of items or elements that I wanted to manifest that helped with my visualization. And I was intentional in doing it. I put the intention of how do I want to grow my wealth and prosperity into that area of my life. And I was specific on things I was going for. Things like I wanted to create a backyard oasis with a pool and a barbecue grill area and things like that. I put some ideas on maybe some of the luxury cars I wanted to visualize and to drive one day. I also put things like, just dollar signs for money or, private jets or, fancy trips around the world, maybe some jewelry. I can't even remember all the things I put under there. But regardless, I had visualized as I was growing and I was going to be successful, what would this look like for me? When I got there, how would I know that I've experienced success? But a lot of those things, I had never done those or touched those or experienced those in my own life. So that's where this conversation comes to be. It's about planning for your dream and visualizing your dream. But have you actually lived it and touched it yet? And I bet many of you haven't. And that's okay. That's where a lot of us are or were. I'm going to share a story. When I was younger, my parents took myself and my brother and my sister to an annual holiday. I think it was a brunch or a lunch or something like that for a club they had belonged to. And this event was held at a country club. Now, at 8 or 10 years old, however old I was young at the time, I had never been to a country club ever. Didn't really even know what they were. But I know we kind of had to dress up. So I got my one, dressy out outfit out of the closet, and made sure, hair was combed and we looked prim and proper. I think I had tights on and, maybe some dressy shoes. And we piled in the family station wagon and we went to this country club and we got there and we pulled up and, somebody showed us where to park. Somebody took our coats the second we walked in the door. I didn't know what that was all about. Like they took my coat and hung it up for me and gave me some sort of a ticket to hang on to. Then they escorted us in. Everyone that worked there was dressed in a fancy suit, kind of a tuxedo. Waiters and waitresses were carrying around these silver trays with little snacks on them. And at the time, I had no idea what an hors d'oeuvre or canapé was. And I thought, what is that strange food? That doesn't look like cheese and crackers to me. And I was very intimidated. And I was very quiet as I kind of looked around. But the things that I noticed about that place were seemed very luxurious. There was huge chandeliers hanging from the big vaulted ceilings with big oak beams and ornate wallpaper, and all the woodwork was out of this world. And the bathrooms even. As my mom ushered us in there to kind of get freshened up before the luncheon started, the bathroom, instead of just having, the place for the toilets and the sinks, there was a whole separate area when you went into the restroom where you could sit down on a comfy chair and there was a whole wall of mirrors. There was free hairspray and mouthwash and lotion and maybe, some cotton balls or Q-tips or things that you could literally freshen yourself up. I think there was deodorant or maybe a free comb that you could, run it through your hair. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, this is incredible. It's like all the creature comforts of home, but you're not at home, but even more luxurious, than I could have ever made it at my house. And so then we were able to sit down for the luncheon. We were served by waiters. They came and served our plate of food that was beautifully designed on the plate, almost too pretty to eat. They whisked it away when we were done. They brought out the dessert, same thing. It was very, I felt very pampered and I felt very luxurious. And I remember at a young age thinking, wow, people actually live like this. And I got to taste that. We were able to go to that function for several years after that. And each year that I went, I kind of knew what to expect. I knew that my coat would get hung up. I knew that there would be fancy little nibblies on a tray that somebody would be serving me in a tuxedo or a suit. I knew what to expect when we sat down for the meal and how to dress and how to act and how to be polite and not interrupt and all those things. And what to do in the bathroom. How funny is that? And as I got older and as I thought about, what I wanted to be when I grew up and what kind of life I wanted to live, whether it was my own personal life or my business life, I saved that memory and I remember that experience to this day about how it felt to be in a place like that. So fast forward 30, 40 years from then to now, it's fun that I've gotten to experience more than once fancy country clubs and beautiful spaces where people that have wealth like to hang out. It's pretty cool. So what are some things you can do? If you don't have access to a country club, that's okay. There are plenty of things you can do in your life today that cost nothing, zero, cost you not a dime to try it before you buy it per se, but try it on first and foremost to see, is that even a dream you want to put onto your vision board? And if it is, you kind of get to know, hey, I'm going to continue to touch it and to grow myself into this because the more comfortable you are with understanding what your dream is, the more likely you are to get it. How crazy is that? If you can visualize it and you can taste it and you could feel it, smell it, you know how to respond to it, how much better you are to set yourself up to work towards that versus if you've never been able to set foot on anything before. And I would say private jets are probably something that, is probably way off in my vision board to ever get to experience. Yes, I have flown on individual planes, but a luxurious private plane, no, I've never flown on one before. But what I have done, I have gone to expos and shows where private plane companies had some displays and they almost had a mock-up of a private plane. And I thought, I'm going to go sit in that cockpit. I'm going to go sit and feel the leather and see what the spatial looks like so I could understand it. So I could be like, okay, I get this. Side note, it actually felt a little claustrophobic to me versus a commercial plane that has a little more headroom in it, but to each his own. Anyway, so things you can do today to start touching your dream before your dream is a reality. So if you are somebody that has a dream of dining in a fancy restaurant, for example, I'm sure there's one in your town. You're like, oh, I would love to dine there, but it's $200 a person. I can't afford that. Okay. Can you go in and have a cocktail? Just one. Can you go in and check out the menu and, kind of investigate it for a future time? Can you jump on their website and understand, what their menu looks like and what different things they're priced at? There's lots of different things you can do with that. My family and I love to do happy hours. And a lot of times that happy hour menu, they might have specials on them, or they're kind of test driving some of their new offerings on their menu on their happy hour menu. And they're smaller bites and they're a lot less expensive. And sometimes I actually enjoy the happy hour menu or the appetizer menu a lot better than the full menu. And so sometimes we will purposely go to restaurants that we like just to eat the happy hour or the appetizer menu, which is kind of fun. Another way that's inexpensive or no cost at all is test driving cars. I was on a business trip in the last few years in a city that I was able to drive to. So it was only a few hours away. And I actually had a few hours in between appointments. And I thought, what am I going to do with my time? I could work on something or sit in a coffee shop. But ironically enough, the area of town that my meetings were in a more affluent part of town. And as I was driving by, there was a whole corner of car dealerships. And this had to be luxury car dealerships. So things like Mercedes and BMW and Maseratis and Range Rovers. I mean, they had them all. I mean, they were all like right in that area. And I'm like, you know what? I think it was like 1 o'clock on a Tuesday. So it was not a busy day of the week for car sales. And I'm thinking, you know what? I've got a couple hours. I've always wanted to test drive some of these cars. And I never had the guts to go in. First of all, I didn't think I'd have the money to afford it. I wasn't ready to do that, make that purchase yet. But I was also thinking, I've never driven these. Do I even like them? Would I even like a Mercedes, or would I even like a, Lexus? I don't know. So I pulled in. I pulled in, and all you need to test drive a car is a valid driver's license. That's it. You don't have to put any money down. You don't have to sign your life away. And I walked inside and I said, hello. I said, you know what? I'm considering getting a different car, but I'm not quite sure what I want yet. I have been looking at, and I pointed out, these types of cars, and this is kind of what I'm looking for. Can I take one for a test drive? And they said, sure. And so they took a copy of my driver's license and gave me the keys. It didn't even come with me. And away I went. And I got to drive, around for, I don't know, 5 or 10 minutes or so. And I drove a few cars. It was a lot of fun. And what I realized, it surprised me a little bit. I didn't like any of the cars more than my current car, but I got a chance to sit in it, to drive it, to back it up, to check out all the features for free. And so that way, how bad would I have felt if, someday if I decided, okay, now I've made it big and I'm going to go spend $100,000 on a car and I'm going to buy a Mercedes SUV. I don't know. And I went to go buy that because that was my dream car in my head, but I actually didn't like it. So here's a way you can kind of test it out that way too. Another fun thing we like to do, and with all of the apps on your phone anymore, you can pull up Zillow, Realtor.com. Let's say one of your dreams is to live in a beautiful home. And maybe you want that beautiful home to be on the ocean or on a lake or on a golf course. I don't know. Pull up Zillow or Realtor.com or whatever app you want to use, because even though houses are not on the market just yet, they will list, housing values and prices and stuff like that. And you get to drive around, and we've done this before. We do this on vacation sometimes. It's a lot of fun. We'll go find the really expensive neighborhoods where the house prices are really high, and we'll just kind of meander through there. And we'll check things out as like, okay, how do they have their house designed? What does their lawn look like? Do they have a gate? Do they have stonework? Is there a dog running around out front? What do their neighbors look like? What do the sidewalks look like? How does the entrance of the subdivision feel like? And that allowed me to visualize all of those elements, thinking, okay, someday I would like to live in this environment. So for me, our someday dream is I want to live on a golf course. I live out in the country right now, and I'm blessed with a lot of privacy and some beautiful nature. And I tell you what, I mean, that helps me relax at the end of the day when I can sit on my back patio and look at a beautiful landscape. And I thought, someday if we decide to move, a golf course would be a beautiful way to still have the privacy and still have the beautiful part of nature with maybe the close amenities of a country club that I got to experience as a young girl. But, those are things you can sample and taste right now. The power in being able to taste something, I think, plants a seed deep in your head. As you think about it, okay, now I can visualize it. Now I can touch it. Now I know what it's made of. Now I know how I can get it. I understand the process and how it works. The other thing, besides driving around to see what houses are available in the expensive parts of town, go to open houses. That's another totally free way that you can touch those items before you buy those items or before you have the money to buy those items. We were vacationing, this is probably 10 or 15 years ago, in Colorado, and we were there with some friends, and we were staying in an Airbnb, and it was fine. It was nice. We were on our way back from grabbing a bite to eat to the Airbnb, and we're kind of, driving up through the hills and the neighborhoods, and I happened to see an open house sign. And I said, oh, let's stop by. And I remember my husband was freaking out a little bit. He says, oh, no, 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 no. I mean, this looks like a pretty big house. In fact, I think at the time it was like a $2.5 million house. Well, this is 10, 15 years ago. So you can imagine what the price of that house would be today, probably double that. And I said, you know what? Why not? I mean, we're not going to buy a house here. We don't even live here. But I mean, there's no rules that say you can't walk into the house. So he came in with me. So did our friends. He was nervous the whole time. He thought, oh my gosh, they're going to find us out. Like, we can't afford this house. But I think it's about how you approach situations. I walked in the door, and there was a couple agents there showing the house and introduced themselves. Like, hey, what are you here for? What are you looking for? I said, well, actually, we're on vacation. We have an Airbnb. I didn't tell them where the Airbnb was or what we were paying per night. They didn't need to know that. They didn't care. I said, we've always thought about, we love this area. Maybe someday we'll buy a house here. And we saw this open house, and we thought, hey, let's go check it out while we're here. That is the truth. And so we got a chance to wander around this gorgeous high-end house. We got to feel the whatever the countertops were. I don't even know what they were, quartz, something like that. See all the bells and whistles in the kitchen. We got to go into the primary bedroom and see the view from the balcony and the steam shower and the saunas. And I mean, everything you could possibly imagine, the big vaulted ceilings. It kind of made me feel like that country club when I was a young girl. But this is somebody's house. This is where they go to sleep at night and they make their food in the morning, and where they watch TV with their family. And I got to experience that because why not? And I guarantee you, the people that were walking around that house experienced the open house with me. I guarantee not many of them could probably afford that house either. But that's the beauty of it. You don't have to. You get to test it out. And honestly, you might think, you know, that's a beautiful house, but it's not my taste. I want something a little different. So then that helps get you into discussion. I asked the real estate agent that was listing the property, I'm like, tell me more about these floors. What are these? Are these solid wood? Are they luxury vinyl? What are they? Tell me about, the lighting. Tell me about this. And you get to learn little nuggets, and shows that you're interested in that, because the more you can kind of catalog back in your brain, kind of helps plant the seed for those visualization and manifestations down the road. How cool is that? I know many of us thinking, okay, I can't even afford, to go get the fancy cocktail at the fancy restaurant because I don't have, what it takes to do it. So here's another idea. I bet you ought to eat at some point. And maybe you have to eat once a week and you go to a fast casual restaurant, and maybe for your family you spend $50. I don't know. So think about this. Can you forego that weekly visit to your favorite local restaurant and save up for a couple weeks so you and your significant other can go grab a drink at this place and just give it a little taste? You might not be able to buy the whole meal, similar to like if there's a fancy hotel. I think I shared an episode about a year or so ago about our stay at the Ritz-Carlton. And that's the first time we've ever stayed at a Ritz-Carlton. And we only stayed a couple nights. But I tell you what, there is a difference between a nice hotel and a luxury hotel. I mean, the price tag, yes, but there's an elevated level of service, of attention to detail, of luxury that if it's something that you're dreaming for, I encourage you, find a way to experience it, even just a little bit for one night. Can you go have a meal there? Can you go have a drink at the bar and not actually stay? There are plenty of hotels that have restaurants and bars that you don't need to be a guest at the hotel to enjoy a lot of their services. So check those things out. It might be a day pass you can get just to go hang out at the pool. I know friends of mine recently got back from Vegas, and several of the hotels offer just that. So maybe you don't have to stay on the strip, but you can pay $25 for a day pass to go enjoy all the amenities at the pool and the restaurants and the lounges and all that kind of stuff. So you kind of get the best of both worlds. So why am I sharing this in the first place? Because I want you to embrace the person you're becoming. I think in our lives, when we are somebody that are big goal setters and we think, I want more, and I want to earn more, and I want to build myself up more, and I want to have all these amazing experiences. I think sometimes we're afraid of what that means. And we're afraid because of maybe the people in our lives don't have that same vision we do. And it's a scarcity mindset. And they probably think, gosh, I don't want to be too big for my britches. Isn't what I have good enough? I'm not saying that at all. In fact, what you have might be amazing. You might have a beautiful home and a great family, but that doesn't mean you can't want more and you can't want to experience those fun things in life. But it's not for everybody, and that's okay. I know, I think I shared with you when I was walking into that open house in Colorado, that luxury house with my husband, and he just got this like, white as a sheet, like, oh my gosh, we can't go in here. This is not us. And I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying, I just want to check it out. I want to see if this is for us or not. I would love to live in a bigger house and I would love to have a lot more luxury. I don't even know if it's for us, but how are we going to know unless we take a peek and we try it out? So, on the flip side, I know I've been talking a lot about those personal things in your life that you can go touch and experience, which is a lot of fun. But what about the business side? How do you put yourself in a situation to touch the success of business? A lot of times it comes to relationships and people. And you might think, I don't know anybody that's successful. Okay, that's probably not true. You might not know anybody personally that has success, but I bet you know people. You probably know people in your community. You're like, okay, that guy, that lady, they're doing something. They own a company. they give a lot to charity, right? You're thinking, but I don't know them. They're a stranger. I guarantee you, because the law of just relationships and connectivity of people, you probably know somebody that knows them. So how do you get in front of them? I think it a lot has to do with proximity. If you place yourself in the proximity of success, just like touching that thing, like taking the car for a test drive or going to that special restaurant, ordering one drink, if you can put yourself in the proximity of other successful people, it kind of, spills over onto you. Here's how you can make that work. If there's successful people in your community that you admire and want to meet and want a connection to, first and foremost, find out who knows them. Start asking questions. And it might be as easy as, hey, I would like to meet John Smith. Do you happen to know him? Do you know anyone that knows him? What does he like to do? Where does he hang out? Does he have a favorite restaurant or coffee shop in town? If he does, maybe that's a place you can stop by. Find out what his interests are. Does he have any hobbies? Do you have family that has anything in common? Find that commonality. And so when you do have a chance to either, best case scenario, you get an introduction to him, or second, you find something in common that you can then approach him with and say, hey, did I hear that we both have Schnauzer dogs? Do you have that? I have a Schnauzer dog. And I mean, I love people with Schnauzer dogs. Tell me about your favorite aspect of your dog and what you love about him so much, for example. The other thing is that if you find out if there's somebody that spends time at a certain restaurant or whatever, in this day and age, we can remote work pretty well. And another influencer that I heard on another podcast when he was young and starting out, he talked about just that dynamic. He thought, I really want to get in front of, in this case, it was music producers, because he wanted to get into the industry. He just didn't know how. But he realized within the city of LA, he's like, okay, there are a few places about town where a lot of these influential people hang out. They have lunch every day at this restaurant. So he started having lunch every day, Monday through Friday, at that restaurant. And he would order the cheapest thing on the menu. I think it was like a salad and a water. And I think he said he spent like $14 on it a day. But what he would do, he would get there early. And so he would start his lunchtime at like 10:30 or 11. And he would stay till like 2. He'd bring his laptop or he'd bring his notebook, but he would whatever. So what happened over time is that all these influential people that he wanted to get in front of that he did not know saw him there over and over and over again. They thought he was a regular too. Until one day, one of these people comes over to his table and says, I've seen you here like multiple times. Hi, I'd like to introduce myself. What's your name? There was the introduction. Because you just get familiar with people and faces. In fact, because he had been there so much, I bet you if he would have seen them outside of that restaurant, they might have, they could have had that association saying, oh yeah, you have lunch there every day. I've seen you there multiple times. Tell me about yourself. What's going on? You're in their space. It's familiar to them. So how do you get in their space? Sometimes it's through volunteerism, serving on committees, showing up to things, maybe a special event, a performance, something local. I don't know. I mean, find out where they like to hang out and show a genuine interest. I would say the worst thing you can do is show up and maybe you don't like coffee, so you're not going to sit in a coffee shop, or maybe you don't drink, and so you're not going to show up to a bar. I mean, make it something genuine. Find out some commonality. We're like, okay, how else can I get into their world? You never know. I know sometimes when I'm talking to my team about, how to get in front of people of influence, time is precious. So sometimes they don't always have time for coffee, even if you're treating. Sometimes it's as easy as, hey, can I stop by your office and have 10 minutes of your time? 5 minutes of your time. I have 2 questions I'd like to ask you. 2, that's it. Not a paragraph, just 2. And sometimes just, and being specific about what you're asking gets into their world. Prepare those beforehand. And it's a great way to help manifest and visualize and put those elements into your goal setting mindset. So I hope you take this and go touch your dream. Touch your dream now. Test drive the car. Try on the jewelry. It costs nothing, but it allows you to implant that touch and that feel and that smell and that sensory into the magic of manifestation.